All right. So, welcome back to the West Virginia Outdoor Economy Series webinar. And this one today is going to be specifically on designing effective trail signage. If you're new to this webinar, my name is Corey Lilly. I'm your host of the webinar for today. And this webinar is brought to you by the Brad and Alys Smith Outdoor Economic Development Collaborative at WVU. A couple housekeeping items before we kick off the webinar today with our subject matter experts on the team. There's a few things that I want to cover with you in the OEDC world, a few updates to share. If you're new to the OEDC, our purpose is to address population loss in West Virginia, and we do that through our mission of empowering our partners on the ground to be able to best utilize their outdoor recreation assets in the outdoor economy in West Virginia. And we do that through different departments. And the department that this program is delivered through is our outdoor economy and infrastructure side. We also have our talent attraction and retention side. If you've heard of the Ascend West Virginia program or First Ascent, that supports remote workers in the state of West Virginia. Some of our outdoor economy infrastructure and community development programs are listed below, but specifically, we have our Trails Training and Education program that Logan and Rich on today's webinar lead this. So these are in-person workshops that come to your community with an amazing mobile trail lab and do workshops on the ground. We're building out our 2026 schedule, so curious to hear from you and hear your interests. We That schedule is going to be launched, and you can find that on our website. And I'll be dropping some of these links in the chat. Additionally, coming up for the webinar series, we have webinars built out all the way through June. So please, if you're interested in any of these topics, I'll also be dropping a link to where to register for these upcoming webinars. We have our outdoor community meetups that are going to be happening across the state. The next one that we have is in the New River Gorge region, March 12th at Elevation Sports. We'll be hearing from the brand new Beckley Area Trails IMBA chapter in the New River Gorge and Raleigh County Parks and Rec Association. These are really fun social networking events that we have across the state of West Virginia that highlight local projects. We also have one coming up in Morgantown, North Central West Virginia, and one in Elkins. If you're close by, and would like to join, these are free to join. We also have tabling organizations. So if you're an organization and you would like to table at any of these, please reach out to me to get set up. And regardless, we'd love to have you there as an individual to network. I also wanted to keep this slide in here just to thank everyone for joining the inaugural West Virginia Outdoor Economy Summit that happened February 17th through the 19th in Charleston. It was a really energizing festival. We have a survey that's going around so we can gather feedback so we can make this summit even better next year and or the upcoming years. And so I'm going to be dropping that in the chat as well. If you happen to be at the conference and the summit, if you could please fill out that survey, that'd be really helpful for us. Before we kick it off with our featured presenters, I'd like to ask everyone who's on today's call to drop their name and organization and something, why you were interested in this webinar in the chat. That'll be really helpful context for our presenters today to know who the audience they are that they are speaking with. If you'd like to learn more about anything OEDC, the best channel of communications that we have to reach you directly is through our newsletter. We're routinely sending out updates about programs and different things happening in the outdoor economy. So this is the West Virginia Outdoor or the West Virginia Outdoor Economy newsletter. Please sign up to it. And I am really excited to welcome our featured presenters, Logan Chapman and Rich Edwards of the Smith OEDC from on our infrastructure team to talk about today's subject. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and Logan and Rich, y'all can take it away. Thanks so much for being here. I can see that.
Perfect. Thank you, Corey. Sorry, I was bouncing around between all the tabs, folks. I believe Rich is going to kick us off, but first I'll introduce myself. I'm Logan Chapman. I'm the Trail Training and Education Coordinator at the Smith OEDC. So I plan events such as this one. We also offer in-person trainings, and that's that calendar that Corey mentioned is we are days away from getting the rest of it uploaded to the website. Rich?
Yep, looks like I'm up now. Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Excellent. Um, but yeah, let's talk about trail signage. We have a lot of great trails in the state. We have a lot of trails that don't have effective signage. That makes it really hard for us to um, capitalize on those trails. And so one of the things we've been working on is a draft signage toolkit that breaks down signage, trail signage in a simple manner and gives people easy tools to be able to go ahead and implement effective signage. Next. And we break our let's go back one. We break our signage down into a couple different categories. Um, we've got let people know where they're going and how they need to get there. Let people know about the risks and what expected behavior we have of them, and then take that opportunity while we have people in a really awesome space to go ahead and educate them a little bit about the history, about the cultural aspects, or about what activities they're trying to engage. But really, it's all about letting people know what the rules are for that site. Have in there. Really, from a structural perspective, when we look at signage both as a visitor and then as a land manager, it makes more sense to look at it in terms of like where it's located in the trail system, because that really gives us an idea of what the function is. And almost all of our signage is a combination of those three types of information. We bundle them together into different elements, but how much information and what you need really depends upon where you're at in the system. So we look at these two different locations and one different type. Next. And the one we're probably most familiar with is our primary access points. This is our kiosk. This is our welcome point. This is when you're coming onto the property. And this is our opportunity to really inform people, give people the most information. These are the most info-dense signs we have out there. And then our secondary is when people are in the property, or they're changing, they're already on a trail, but they're changing from one ownership to another, or they're doing some jurisdictional boundary, or it's an access point into a park that isn't a formal trailhead. A backdoor access from a community that may just be a trail that goes into the park, but you still want to tell people about the local rules, like their dogs are supposed to be on leash once they're in the park, kind of idea. Next. And each one of these, as part of the toolkit, we look at each type of sign and what kind of elements need to be in it. This is intended so people can have their own branding, their own logos, their own design for a sign. And this is kind of a checklist about what information needs to be in there. And for an example, our Kessler Mountain Regional Park sign from Arkansas is what we would consider a little on the info dense and small side for the amount of information it's trying to convey. Next. So here's an example of a sign that's broken down, and then you can see how it draws out each one of the different elements. And they're in different places. Go ahead and go to the next one. And 2 clicks so we can see the letters. Yep. So this is from Mauer Track, Mauer Basin. And you can see they have much of the same information, but the format looks very differently. But the same knowledge chunks, the same information that people need at the kiosk, where they are, the map, the trail descriptions and the ratings, and then all the different rules and regulations or the preferred behavior you want for people out there, the code of conduct. Next. Part of this is warnings. And we've chosen a variety of different warning signs in here, but one of the key elements is we want to keep things fairly simple. And it's not just the activities people are involved in. We need to let people know from a liability perspective of us as land manager that they are engaging in a dangerous activity. And really, when you're talking about being on a trail, anytime you're on a trail, any way you're getting there, whether you're hiking, climbing, mountain biking, you're engaged in a dangerous activity and you're outdoors in the non-built environment. So you're in a dangerous place. So we need to warn people about this. And the language down in the lower right corner is stuff that we use on the WVU signs that we've determined to be as broad spectrum and our lawyers really like that. The idea is that we put the onus of the risk on the visitor. They take responsibility for their actions on the property. They take responsibility for those choices. And this gets back to the heart of the signage, especially around the regulatory and the warning, is we want visitors to make informed decisions so they can own their decisions. If they're not informed, they're in ignorance, and they may be able to argue they didn't know. Well, if they're informed, they own those decisions from a liability perspective. Next. And then we want to encourage people to behave the right way. Um, and again, how we do this, how we make this sound like it comes from their buddy rather than their dad telling them how to behave. But that code of conduct, respect each other, respect the land, respect the trail, all about respect rather than don't do this, don't do that. Rather be this person, do this right thing. Next. Um, there's several different difficulty ratings that are out there. These are intended to inform the technical challenge of the trail. And generally in North America, we use some version of IMBA's trail difficulty rating system on shared use trails and mountain bike trails. In areas that are more bike park oriented, the National Ski Area Association has encouraged the adoption of the orange pill. That's on the right. And that indicates more of a free ride style trail, generally indicates some kind of airtime or shape jump features are going to be involved. A little bit different than the stuff without the orange pill. But generally, for mountain bike and shared use trails, the IMBA difficulty rating system is what we use in the US. There are some other versions that are used for specifically hiking trails, but those are not very common in North America. Next. And because difficulty ratings only go so far in terms of telling you what you're really getting into, and there are different styles of trail, different flavors, just like say with like bluegrass music, there's a lot of different varieties of bluegrass music. Same with like an intermediate trail, there's a lot of different varieties in intermediate trail. And that's where a trail description really gets into letting people know what skills they need, what they're getting into. I would say the just trail descriptions on the fly is really good. Talks about berms and jumps. You're going to want to have those kind of bike handling skills. The trail descriptions at the bottom, they also include something else, which is the distance and the elevation change. Difficulty rating is only about the technical challenge. The physical challenge is easily defined in metrics we already have, which is how long is the trail and how much elevation gain do you have. That's going to tell you what the physical challenge of the trail is. And then the trail description just helps flesh that out some more. Next. So these are secondary acts. So we've talked about all the different types of elements or the different flavors of elements that go into that. Our secondary kiosk, these are examples of the Park Springs Park one is coming off a neighborhood. So it doesn't have the map. It doesn't have a lot of the extra information. It just has the key critical stuff in there, the park regulations, the rules that are changed. This would also be a common place to have a QR code where you could then access the full kiosk or the full map. The one on the left is an example inside a park system, all owned by the same property owner, but the type of trails change significantly as they go into the bike park zone. So they're going from a more cross-country trail network into a more hard surface bike park. So it's got a secondary kiosk there because the expectations, the risks changed a little bit. How things are done, the etiquette in that in a more crowded space is going to be a little bit different. This is an example in Morgantown would be you're on the Caperton Trail, you're on a rail trail, and you're going into the WVU Arboretum. There'd be a sign there that lets you know you're going into the WVU Arboretum and that the rules may be slightly different for your behavior than they were on the city property immediately adjacent to it. Next slide. And now we're going to move from our trailheads onto the trail and the wayfinding and the information you want to have on the trail. And Logan's going to take it away from here.
Thanks, Rich. So our second category, the trailside wayfinding, is going to have largely the same information that folks will find at the primary access points, but maybe not all of it. This is about keeping. You can see these in four pretty common themes. So starting on the left with just your classic traditional trailblaze, whether that's painted or the plastic placard that's on that tree. Then your posts in the middle. The one on the left there is the flexi posts. These are made out of fiberglass oftentimes. And then next to that, the wooden version is what we see a lot on our older trails and like in the Forest Service systems. And then the next one, your mini map or mini hub, is going to give you much more information, and we'll cover that in just a moment. First things first, though, your intersections. Um, Anywhere someone is going to reach an intersection on a trail, they have to make a decision. So your signage here should encourage them to make the right decision or the decision that they want to make to have a good time and not that mega surprise adventure whenever you have your entire family or a bunch of friends in tow and you told them it's going to be, yeah, a really great, awesome, fun, easy hike. Try to prevent those sufferfests. So, looking here at the post in the middle, this is one of those flexi posts. They're fiberglass, and all of the signage on that are just stickers. Some vendors you can buy just like stock versions. Others you can get some custom ones made as well. But those are really convenient because if you're going out and making updates or changes or doing the signage from the jump, is you can have some of those posts and then just the stickers thrown in your pack, and you can build them on site whenever you see what you need. So here we got, okay, this is the easiest trail. That's where I want to stay. So I'm going to follow that. I'm going to bear to the left here at this intersection. Should I need something, emergency help, that's that emergency locator number there in the middle, CWM 300. So if you were to get hurt or lost and need help, if you contact emergency services, give them that number, they're going to know where to find you. And then next, you can see like, okay, I can be on a bike, I can hike on this trail, but if it has a motor, I should not be there. And then there you go, you're continuing on your way. Now, your hub maps are awesome and a great addition to your intersection posts. This is where that decision that they make of whether they're going to change trails or stay on the current one is consequential. Whether that is, hey, if you go right instead of left here, it's going to be 5 miles before you get back to the parking lot as opposed to half a mile. Or if this is an intersection where maybe your green trail reaches two other trails that are going to be intermediate, or maybe your black diamond, your very difficult trails, and maybe folks aren't ready for that type of adventure. So you have that map. You're going to have short, brief trail descriptions of what the other options are. So that way, if they choose, they can go on that Black Diamond adventure, or if they're ready to go back to the trailhead because we have weather coming in, or that's just the goal for the day, then have that sign and say, "Hey, easiest way out, back to the trailhead." This is something for folks that ski or snowboard. In a lot of your resorts, oftentimes there is the easiest way down sign. That's something that we highly encourage folks have on your trail system. And anytime you have one of these mini kiosks or your hub maps that's telling folks, hey, easiest way back to the parking lot or shortest way back to the parking lot. So folks have that bailout option to them. Now the blaze, good old fashioned. I'm sure we've all seen tons and tons of these in our life. Um, Blazing, of course, doesn't have a ton of information. It's largely just a point of reassurance when you're going down the trail, right? Like, hey, here you are. You were still on the trail. Great job. Another use for blaze is delineating an allowed trail. So in some areas, off-trail travel is not allowed. So your blaze is just telling folks, hey, you are in that trail corridor. This is where you're allowed to be. Keep on doing the thing. And then another thing we see in West Virginia with the Allegheny Trail is that a specific color blaze can be used to mark a designated route. So the Allegheny Trail, for example, runs from the Mason-Dixon line in Preston County all the way down to Lewisburg through the entire Mon National Forest. And that trail has some part of the route is on roads, part of the route is on different trails. And the Allegheny Trail has, in this photo here, the skinny vertical orange rectangle for their blaze. So even though I might be on the High Falls Trail, if I'm following that same blaze, I know that I'm still following the route of the Allegheny Trail. Cool thing to talk about that not all folks know is that blazes have some symbology to them. This graphic on the left here is telling you what that looks like. I think the easiest tip I can give folks if you're trying to decipher what the trailblazers are telling me is the bulk of the information is happening with that top blaze more often than not. So, for example, your right turn, we have the two dashes, the one on top pointing to the right, that's the direction it needs to go for me. Same thing with the start and end markers for a trail. I like to think of it, that top blaze is my arrow. So if I see the top blaze in the middle, or the center blaze up top, okay, that's telling me to continue on this way. This is the start of the trail. If it's at the bottom, it's pointing down. There we go. We've made it to the end of the trail. And then we have this photo here on the right of some flagging tape. And as trail professionals, whenever we're designing new trail to be built, we go out with flagging tape and mark where we want it to be. And we use this same sort of symbology structure with our flagging tape. So in this photo, for example, you can see there are three orange pieces of tape and three pink pieces of tape. That's where two trails end, and that spot right there is going to be a hub. Now, if you are blazing trails, they're effective, they're quick, they're affordable. Want to offer some words of advice to set you up for success when you're blazing. A really big thing is, if you go to the hardware store, buy some nails to put up your plastic blazes, you don't want to get ferrous nails, so not your steel. Look for the aluminum ones because if where our blazes are, they're generally like chest to height level. And if a tree were to come down and the trail crew comes out to buck up that tree and reopen the trail, if they're cutting through, they might hit that nail with their chainsaw right next to the trail corridor where it lies. And if it's a ferrous nail, they're going to destroy that chain. They're going to have a really bad day. So aluminum, it's going to do less damage to the chain. It's going to be able to cut through it and just create some less surprises for the trail manager. Another note with this first photo too is when you are using your aluminum nails, don't bend them over like they are in this photo. Keep them sticking out and don't drive them all the way into the tree because trees continue to grow. And if it's all the way in there, the tree's going to gobble up those nails a lot faster. Also, just generally encourage you not to use screws because they can't pull out easily because they're cutting and boring into the tree. And also, if you're using screws, you're going to be tempted to drive them in much further, which gives you the same problems as bending the nails over. And finally, be careful not to overblaze your trails. It's a little bit hard to see with this photo on the right. You can see three blazes just from that one photo. Um, it's awesome. People often know that they're on the trail, but too many blazes, especially at switchbacks or intersections, can create more confusion than help. So in the summertime, whenever you're at full foliage, we encourage you that only one blaze should be visible at any given time. So that's our trailside wayfinding. The third category are going to be your informational signs, and we split these up into interpretive or instructional. Your interpretive signs exist to connect your modern visitor to either the cultural or the natural history of a given area. So the photo on the left here, pretty traditional cultural history sign, talking about a logging boom town that happened in the state. And then here on the top right, the banana slug, I really like this. It is talking more about your natural history. This was in a series talking about all the different flora and fauna and wildlife along that trail. I really like that the sign is very, very simple, but they incorporated the mini sculpture there of the slug to add a little bit of art to the trail. And then finally, at the bottom here, the bison warning. This is really clever because it's both a warning sign, but it also gives people a little taste of interpretation. It's telling you, hey, bison are big, they weigh 2,000 pounds, and they can sprint a whole lot faster than you can run. It's a very nice way to tell people, like, hey, don't mess with the bison. And then your instructional signs. You're more likely to see these in your bike skills areas, maybe your pump tracks, or your more traditional outdoor fitness stations that a lot of parks or rail trails have. In Morgantown along the Caperton Trail, there's one of those that's telling you how to do a specific thing. So you got the bunny hop in the left photo here, how to jump, get both wheels off the ground on your bike, or how to navigate dips while you're on your bike. If it is on that outdoor fitness station. Maybe this is like what exercise is intended to be done with this piece of equipment and how you're going to do that. Now, all this stuff is great. We've kind of set the stage. All right, I've got these three different categories. This is the information I can expect to have on those signs. But how do I, as a land manager, go about making signage happen? The first step and something that's critical is that you want to have a brand guide. And I have some examples coming up in just a moment. Your brand guide is going to define like how you're expressing the character of either the organization that is going to be managing the trails or that property itself. Once you have that, that's kind of setting the stage, then you can move forward to working on your sign plan. And your sign plan is less what it looks like and more how you're going to get the signs on the ground. This is talking about the technical aspects. How big are these signs? What materials am I using to make the signs? And where are they going to go in my trail system? So here's an example of a brand guide that was built for Beckley Outdoors. This one is pretty robust and has tons of information. So we have all of our allowed fonts in here. We have the approved colors, um, a the mountain panographic, something that just shows like without any other branding, hey, this is us. And then also they have some approved symbology that they welcome for their signs. This is another example for the New River Gorge Towns initiative. This one is for a broader, it's not just trails. These are going to be signs popped up in communities as well. But I really like that it's the same thing here. You got your colors, there's the fonts, the different logos that are available, but they also start talking about the structure itself. These signposts have the bridge incorporated on, which is a really neat way to say like, hey, you're in a New River Gorge town without any text involved. And then here is a much more simple example for our partners at Elkins Area Shared Trails that maybe this is just as simple as having your logo, you have the approved fonts, and then you have the approved colors, and you can take that and run with it for your signs or for your newsletters or whatever is going out. So I mentioned with the New River Gorge Towns example that the structure of the sign had the bridge, right? And it's important to know that a sign is not both of these things together, that you need to make decisions and prepare to have both the structure, the thing that is holding that sign, and then the panel. And then colloquially, we say a sign and we think of these two things together. So if you're going to contract a designer or figure this out, you need to have separate discussions about both your structures and your panels. Some more tips that we share with folks is follow the ABCs of these. If all of this were to be condensed, I'd want you to, not put too much information on it. This slide is kind of approaching that line. This is getting pretty wordy, right? Your signs should not be a textbook. And make it generally just look nice, make it feel good, and try to use positive language. So down there, encouraging proper use and being friendly. Like people are going to be more receptive to something if you're encouraging a behavior rather than spending the entire time on that sign telling them what they can't. Because then they're going to start questioning, well, is fun allowed here? So we're going to do a little bit of an activity. I'm going to queue up Corey here to pop up a poll, but generally you all know, even if you're not a designer, you have a rough idea of what a successful sign looks like. So go ahead, give us a thumbs up if you're digging this sign and the structure, or give us a thumbs down if you're not.
All right, we have 5 responses. Seven. I'm gonna go to another moment and then we'll end the poll and share a response.
All right, yeah, everyone is not loving this sign, right? The sign itself, the panel on the left side there with the map and the rules and regulations, that's stellar. All of the information is on there. It's maybe a little small, that could be bigger. But I think the biggest thing that I dislike about this structure is those plexiglass covers, the barn doors on the sign. Because, as you can see in this photo, it creates a wicked glare that makes it really hard to read that sign. And sometimes on the really bright days, you got to put your face up to it and put your hands up just to try to peer into that. Additionally, those coverings take more maintenance in the long term. They get dirty sometimes since they're often not sealed well. If this is next to like a dirt road, dirt and dust and grime can get on the inside of it. So then visitors can't go up and just wipe that off to see the sign better. It's trapped on the inside. Another thing is that these the wasps and bees really like them because it's effectively a little greenhouse, right? It's a really warm place. So if they can get into those cracks, it's a great place that you're going to find bees nests. Okay, we're going to do the same thing. Thumbs up or thumbs down of what we think about this next slide.
We're getting some good responses. I'm going to end it in just a couple seconds. So get your response in.
A little bit more of a mixed bag here, but mostly no. This one, if we were looking at just the structure of the sign, I think that's awesome. Really, really pretty. Tells you right where you are, has the welcome to it. And then, the maps are on there. There's really great information, but it's a little bit wordy, right? And it's not clear as a visitor if I'm approaching this and I want to get some really quick information before I head out. Um, it's going to take time for me to decipher and try to find what I want out of this sign. So again, it should be very, very clear with your signage. Like, hey, here's the do's, here's the don'ts. The trail's this way, and then you're on the road. All right, Corey, going to bump to the next one. All right. Everyone's liking the sign. I'm glad to hear that. This is an effective interpretive sign. It's pretty brief, right? We've got one, two, three. There's like 15 lines of text total, and plenty of white space too. The design of the sign is not super clustered. It's spread out. The text can breathe. The artwork can breathe. And while it is a pretty simple interpretive sign, it gets the point across very easily, right? Give invasives the brush off, and then it kind of gives you the why and the details below. Has some pictures of the invasives. Pretty effective sign.
It's a
And
nice example of dual distance fonts. You can read the one part from 20 feet away and it draws you in so you get closer to read the finer print.
yeah, thank you, Rich. All right, Corey, let's get another one going here. Oh, a mixed bag here. All right. Excellent. So there's a lot of good things happening with this sign. And then there's like some not so great things. One being that I'd say like the biggest negative is that there's a lot of negative language. I feel like this sign is talking down to me and like, it's like my like I'm being scolded by my grandparents to an extent. But it also is like there's plenty of white space. It's very brief. The font size is really good. All of those things are awesome. And then you can't see it in this photo, but the structure here for this really big kiosk with a roof. It's a really, really impressive structure. I think this is a great sign overall. Just use a little bit of updating to get it to like perfect, 100%. Okay, the next one we're going to throw up here to give a little bit of context. This does come from New England. Um, and these are very different types of signs, right? It's different than what we've seen before with the kiosks or your trailside signage. It looks more like something you'd see on the side of a road.
No eye contact. That's a first I've seen.
Yeah, no eye contact definitely popped out at me. Is that enforceable?
It is, there we go. Okay. Mostly no's. That's interesting. I will say personally, I'm a fan of these because they're using humor, right? There's some standard regulatory stuff in here, right? Like keep your dogs on a leash. Okay. No eye contact per Belmont tradition. These signs went up during the height of the pandemic, so you can see the maintain social distancing, no eye contact. They're adding a little bit of a levity to a time that overall was pretty negative for folks. I think, the appearance, it's very plain, quite generic signs, but you can use humor. They're saying no eye contact, and of course that's a joke, right? People are going to laugh at that. And I point out that this is it's in New England because that's very much like that kind of that New England style of humor. And I also like it's a little bit smaller text, so it might be harder to see. The bottom right, pick up dog poop. The final text there says, even if no one is watching. Really like that they're having fun and playing with the regulatory signs here.
The idea that you get more with honey than vinegar. So when we do have to tell people they can or can't do things, as much as we can have some levity or some whimsy in that, seems like we get a better response to it.
All right, and our final sign poll we have here. Let us know what we got. And this combines a lot of different aspects of signage that we've talked about already. All right, everyone's digging this one. Yeah, I agree. This is a really impressive sign out at Valmont Bike Park in Boulder, Colorado. It's brief, it's concise, it looks really, really nice. And one thing that I really like about this sign is on the right side here. Um, yes, it does have a plexiglass covering. That's not the greatest thing ever, but it's a space on that sign dedicated for temporary postings. So here it looks like there was, some Halloween event that was going up at the time this photo was taken. That's awesome. Instead of having the 8.5 by 11s just taped or stapled all over your signs, it gives folks a designated space for that, and it protects that more temporary printer paper that goes up. Rich, do you have any additional comments about that sign before I move on? All right. Cool. Thanks for playing along with that, guys. I hope it was helpful. You do know more about signage than you maybe initially thought.
I was going to say that that one was a great example of regardless of how much thought you put into your signage beforehand, things will happen afterwards before your next version of signage, and you may still have additional signs being added. The two signs to the side were not part of the original installation when those signs were first put up. I think the one on the right reflects a more recent ordinance that's been passed. And in terms of structure, the cost on that one, I bet today installed. Now, if you just want to talk about the cost of the structure and the printing, north of 5, under 12, that does not include the graphics design. That's probably another 1,000 to 1,500, maybe more. Depends upon how many versions of that sign they did and how much of that model was replicated across the park. Generally, we cost estimate for kiosks, the panel and the structure and the labor to install. We generally put $10,000 on a one panel kiosk as a cost estimate before construction.
Excellent. Thank you. So, managing these signs. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as getting them designed, getting them installed, and then just leaving them be forever. Signs do take some management, some maintenance, and that starts with inspecting. How frequently you have to take a look at these signs and make sure they're in tip-top shape depends on the area. But generally, quarterly is a good place to start. If this is a spot that's like often kind of damp and sees a lot of shade, it's more likely that sign is going to see like some moss or mildew, other growth happening to it that you'll just have to clean up more periodically. So just keep an eye on that, get a feel, and then you'll know within a year or so which signs need more regular attention than others. You got to maintain your signs. Unfortunately, vandals do exist in this world. You know, sometimes you're going to be going out with just some paint covering up some tags that people put on it. Maybe if it's a metal structure that's going to rust, your panels might fade over time. These are all things to consider. And then, of course, it's a good idea if you're going to install signs at your trail system to know how many you have, what they say, and where they are. And then, of course, over time, regardless of your materials, no matter what, eventually your signs are going to need refreshed. Either that is just getting new content on them. Maybe you've had new trails built. Maybe some ordinances have changed and regulations have changed on that property that you need to update. So all of these things eventually will need refreshed or replaced. Here's some examples of what this could look like. The two photos here on the left, these are both on U.S. Forest Service property. First one here, all wooden structure, 4x4 post with the wooden panels that are routed out. We see these all over the place, right? They're pretty effective. They're cost effective, but they rot over time, right? They're wood. So what the Forest Service has started using recently is kind of this hybrid approach in the middle. Still a 4x4 foot post, but the panel itself is pieces of plastic. So it goes together like a sandwich. You have brown piece, yellow piece, brown piece. So then you can have these whatever size they need to be, have them on hand. You can potentially route them in-house, and then you have the pieces to go put them together. They're plastic. They're going to last a really long time. And as far as cleaning goes, it's way easier than porous wood because you can potentially even go out with alcohol wipes to clean these up. Get that yellow bright and shiny again, so it's easy for folks to read. Bottom right here, this is a sign that's just seen some graffiti. On the structure itself, that's a pretty easy fix. You could just go over and paint over that. On the bottom right, though, it's a little bit more complicated because folks have tagged the panel itself or part of the panel. So one thing you could do is maybe just replace the blue and like salmon colored pieces of that panel. Just have part of that printed out, and then you can bolt it over top of that as your fix until it's time to refresh the entire sign in the future. It doesn't have to be the entire thing replaced at once. Speaking of refreshing and updating your signs, this is something that we see in a lot of our kiosks all across the country, right? The initial panel is really great. There's a map, excellent trail descriptions, and there's rules, but this is what I mentioned with regulatory changes or your temporary postings of things that come up. How do I add these to my sign that is pretty costly to have designed, printed, and installed? Whenever I have in West Virginia, we have 47 state parks and forests. I'm fairly certain every park has more than one major kiosk. If I have to make an update every time something changes at a state level, that's not possible to do, right? So you start running into this problem of putting up your temporary postings, the 8.5 by 11s, and it's really easy to fall into the trap of too much information and information overload. So you're likely going to have to contend with this, but I'd encourage you to be very aware of what the flow is going to look like and how are you getting the most critical information across to the visitor. Rich queued us up at the start of the conversation today by mentioning the WVU Trail Signage Toolkit. Most of the information we pull from here today is going to be covered. If you look at that, though, we go even more in depth. It's hard to cover the whole breadth of trail signage over just an hour webinar, but shoot either myself or Rich an email, and we're happy to get you a draft copy before it's published. Just note it is a draft. It's likely to change. There's going to be some incomplete information in there. But in the meantime, if this is something that is going to help you with a project immediately, we are more than happy to share that and get that out to folks.
If you're working with a graphics designer on sign panels, the toolkit's really useful for getting them up to speed on what the critical elements are to have on each one of the signs. And if you do use the draft, we'd really stoked to get feedback from you about whether it was useful, if there were parts that you didn't find useful, or more stuff there were questions that were unanswered. We want to make this as useful a toolkit to people as possible.
And to request that from us, of course, everybody got confirmation email from Corey. You can reach out to him, but you can reach myself and Rich directly as well with our emails here on the slide. And I believe we are ready to kick it off to questions.
Yeah, we can help. Question was, do you assist organizations with drafting an RFQ to obtain a designer engineer? We can get on a call, discuss your project, where you're at in terms of having a brand style guide, sign inventory, um, and then give recommendations about which to go forward, and some suggested RFQ language. We may not be able to draft the full RFQ, but we can definitely include some language and provide samples and qualifications language. I'm assuming you're probably using a 5G process to obtain get a vendor.
Do you all have any suggestions or like how do you see physical wayfinding integrating with like digital wayfinding and how people find information on the web? Can you elaborate on any of or give any insight on?
Yeah, I know what we do, and what we recommend is that to have your information um, be mirrored on digital formats as digital platforms as much as possible. OpenStreetMaps is a baseline for a bunch of the digital mapping platforms, so I'd start there. Trailforks is easy to provide a lot of information and to get feedback from people. All Trails and then the Onyx projects, Onyx information as well. Almost all of those allow you to add information for free to their sites. And then whichever one you think works best for your area, you could then have a link to that on your kiosk or on your maps, encouraging people to go there. You can also host digital versions of your maps or your kiosk panels online so people can download those. That could easily be part of your marketing material as well.
Great answer. Thanks. Sean, I see that you have your hand up. Sean Sullivan.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out a suggestion to the group. So I'm Sean Sullivan. I work with the Forest Service. So one thing we've noticed when it comes to signage and kiosks, we tend to have a problem with people shooting them, defacing them in a way. We have found that if we add the American flag to those kiosks and signs, they tend not to shoot them or deface them. Just to throw that out. I don't know if that's in line with your guys's.
That's a great suggestion, Sean. Yeah. That's again getting into that psychology of the visitor and what's going to make them behave the right way.
Yeah, and then another thing about the kiosks themselves, I know one thing that we have strived to, at least in our district in the North Zone here in the Mon, is when we build kiosks, we don't, as most of you probably know, or maybe not know, we don't have a significant amount of funds when it comes to signage and kiosks. So we try everything we possibly can to do things in house. So we've been able to come up with a design, which you can see them in the Mauer track area. Someone had asked about pricing for kiosks. Now it's us essentially what I call a high school shop level skill set here, putting kiosks together and designing them. But one of the key goals for our kiosks within the North Zone is the ability to fix it or take it apart or maintain it. The maintenance is a huge piece for us. So if we're talking $10,000 sign and it gets shot or destroyed in a way, that's very hard for us to fix or maintain. So we've tried to focus mostly on the ability to easily maintain those kiosks. I don't know if that helps. So I can give you an estimate, like our kiosk on the Mauer track, you're looking about, for a single panel kiosk, you're looking about $500 to $600 in material.
Yep.
That's just material. So
you guys are both the Forest Service and the the BLM and the other federal agencies are often optimized for effectiveness and efficiency. A lot of the Carsonite Post examples we had with the kit apart sticker kits, those are very much borrowed from the federal agencies because they are super efficient. You don't have to have a strip a sticker strip that only fits in one location. You can have just a stack of stickers that you can make any sign with out in the field. So you can go out in the field with your sticker pack and a few posts and a driver, and you're much more mobile and much more efficient replacing stuff. Your guys' kiosk philosophy sounds very similar. I love the fact that you're able to put together really cost-effective kiosks like that. Generally, when we're given cost estimates, we are being very conservative because we're never sure about what people are. If they're looking for a Camry kiosk or if they're looking for a Land Cruiser kiosk.
I have a question, or could you all elaborate on, so there's, of course, the need for the permanent kind of fixed kiosks and wayfinding on the trail systems. Can you speak to any of the temporary signage that might need to pop up for like liability purposes, say like if there's a trail closed or something like that, and the importance of having a
Yeah, let's talk
time
about
kind of
temporary
already.
signage about new trails being built and getting better to have some signage than no signage. And your basic minimal signage, especially if you're doing new construction, and this would be outside of federal lands, because the liability perspective is a little different on federal. But we consider having hold harmless language is critical. Um, and temporary signage, when I say temporary, it might last a year or two. Um, but having something that having signage ready to go, even if it's just like real estate style basic temporary signage, having that ready to go so the minute the trails are open, you've got signage up there from a liability perspective. And help and set when you've got a new trail, you've got an opportunity to set expectations for behavior, a really good opportunity right away. If you let people do whatever they want for the first 3 months, then it's much harder to get them to reset their behavior. So if you want to set expectations, like don't use it when it's muddy, you want that stuff up right at the beginning of the sign, right at the beginning of the trail's use, because that's when a lot of people will get exposed to it.
What about for like trail organizations that might just be like temporarily closing a section of trail to work on it for a trail work day or something like that? Do you suggest
If you're
any?
doing trail work, I would definitely into a little bit context sensitivity here. Generally, you want to have signage to let people know work's going on, and two, organization, you want to brag about the fact you're doing work, and you want to recruit new volunteers. So think of your signage as marketing. So you've got something at the trailhead, you've got something along the trail that says, "Hey, trail work ahead. Pay attention if you want to get involved." Um, Maybe a QR code or a website. However, if you're on a trail that is on grade, and is on a prevailing grade and people generally are using it downhill, especially for cyclists, then I would be much more aggressive about my trail work crew signage, where I would have large signs or on backpacks next to the trail saying, "Hey, trail work ahead, trail under construction." And if it was a really fast area, I might even put some X bars across the trail with flagging tape, just to really let people slow down. Not let them know. If I'm in an area where it's not a high speed situation, I'm not going to be as worried. I'm mostly going to be saying, "Hey, we're doing trail work. Say something before you come." But it's such a great opportunity to advertise your NGO or your parks department you're doing that work. Yeah, there's a great example from East. And that's we've seen this done well where one they're somewhat directional on the front of the sign as you're going into the work site. It has like this, and then on the back side it says, "Thanks for enjoying the new trail project. Here's how to volunteer or how to donate." Giving people that extra bonus after they just come off the new section.
That's great. Thanks for that insight. Are there any other questions from the group?
The other temporary signage may be weather related, which is like we just put these up last week. It's been snow covered all winter long. Trails haven't been getting damaged. These are for jump trails, but we know it's going to be 80 degrees next week. It's going to rain. All the snow is going to be away. 80 degrees, people are going to be wanting to get out of the house. People are going to want to go use trails that are too wet to use. So we put up some temporary signage last week that says, "Hey, the trails are closed because it's too wet. Come back when the leaves come out."
Mm-hmm. Do you in those scenarios are you using like a high vis chain or like a rope or like what material would you utilize to like close off a section of trail while also having that sign?
Um, Something that's not going to be seen is creating liability. So we generally use flagging tape, and if we have issues with if we have people ignoring the first sign, either borrow a page from like Greenstone Trails does a great job with this. They have multiple signs on their trail closures for the new construction. And the first sign is it says on the sign, "This is your sign to turn around. This trail is not ready." And then 20, 30 feet down, there's another sign that says, "This trail is really not ready. You stop, turn around." Um, for jump trails, especially for riding, we found that putting the tape bars right across the lips of the jumps on two or three of the jumps really makes it hard to enjoy riding that trail. And that really drives home to the point that, like, hey, I'm not doing the right thing here.
Mm-hmm. Logan and Rich, thank you so much for your time and expertise on today's webinar. Really appreciate this. It's a topic that I feel like is really important from liability to the user experience to brand recognition and promotion and all the things of a trail system. And it's often, I see kind of as a second thought, but having it on the forefront and having this signage guidelines that you all put together in that toolkit is really helpful. So really appreciate your all's time.
We're seeing some great signage go up around the state. It's awesome to see.
Well, to everyone on the webinar, thank you so much for joining. In the chat, there are future webinars that you can sign up for. And if you have any information or any questions that you would like to reach out to us, please reach out to myself, Rich, or Logan. And we hope to see you on the next webinar or at the next event. Thank you so much.